Windsor Castle, Berkshire. Morning light cuts through arrow-slit windows, illuminating corridors where 39 reigning monarchs have walked for 950 years. Tourists photograph the state apartment's gilded ceilings, Van Dyck portraits, throne rooms echoing with ceremony. But turn down a particular corridor in the upper ward, and you'll find something else entirely. A locked door. No photographs, no public access. Beyond it, the private apartment's 52 rooms where royals actually live, spanning 100,000 square feet of space the public will never see. And within those rooms, evidence, documents, decisions, the machinery of monarchy hidden behind Victorian wallpaper and constitutional silence. What exactly are they keeping sealed? And why does a family that lives in public lock away so much in private? Stand at the base of the Round Tower on a February morning. Windsor Castle rises above you like a medieval city, the largest occupied castle in the world. 13 acres of fortifications, towers and apartments, perched on a chalk escarpment overlooking the Thames Valley. The state apartments receive 1.5 million visitors annually, who marvel at the Waterloo Chamber's 100-foot length, the grand staircase's armor display, St. George's Hall with its oak-beamed ceiling. But that's public theater. The real Windsor, the operational Windsor, exists in spaces cordoned off by velvet ropes and staff discretion. The private apartments occupy the east and south wings of the upper ward. Here behind walls 3 feet thick, generations of heirs have maintained separate households within the castle's medieval shell. Edward VII's smoking room. George V's study where he wrote diary entries documenting every day of his reign. Elizabeth II's sitting room overlooking the East Terrace garden where she spent weekends for 70 years. These rooms contain something more valuable than Rembrandts or crown jewels, the documentary evidence of how monarchy actually functions. Letters between royals and prime ministers discussing constitutional crises. Financial ledgers tracking the civil list and privy purse. Architectural plans revealing security measures and escape routes. Medical records. Marriage settlements. Wills that reshape succession. All of it sealed under laws protecting royal privacy, some documents locked away for 100 years after creation. The arithmetic of secrecy is staggering. The Royal Archives at Windsor hold 200,000 photographs, 30,000 volumes, and 550,000 individual documents. Much remains classified. Researchers require special permission. Certain files, particularly those concerning Edward VIII's abdication, the royal finances and wartime activities, remain closed indefinitely. The royal household employs a keeper of the Royal Archives, whose job includes deciding what historians can and cannot see. But why? If the British monarchy survives by projecting transparency and constitutional propriety, why maintain such aggressive control over historical evidence? What decisions made in these private rooms over 200 years require permanent secrecy? The answer lies not in scandal alone, but in the fundamental contradiction at the heart of constitutional monarchy. A family that must appear both ordinary and extraordinary, democratic and divine, transparent and mysterious. And that contradiction was engineered deliberately, beginning with one man's architectural and political vision in the 1820s. April 1824. King George IV stands in the rubble of what was once his childhood home. He's just ordered the demolition of entire sections of Windsor Castle. At 61, massively obese, addicted to laudanum, and deeply unpopular, George IV embarks on the most expensive peacetime building project in British history, the transformation of Windsor from medieval fortress into Gothic palace. His architect, Geoffrey Wyatville, receives instructions that sound like madness. Preserve the medieval silhouette while creating modern luxury inside. Build private apartments that rival Versailles in comfort, but look like they've stood since Edward III's time. Create separation walls within walls so the royal family can retreat from courtiers, politicians, and the public gaze. George IV understood something his predecessors hadn't fully grasped. The monarchy's survival required controlling the narrative, and controlling the narrative required controlling space. After the American Revolution and French Terror, European royalty faced an existential question: how to justify hereditary privilege in an age of democratic sentiment. His answer was architectural. Create public magnificence. The state apartments renovated in the Gothic Revival style, designed to awe visitors and demonstrate continuity with England's medieval past. But simultaneously create private sanctuaries where the actual business of monarchy occurred away from scrutiny. Separate the performance from the performers. Wyattfield's renovation cost £1 million, roughly £100 million in today's currency, and took 12 years. He raised the round tower's height by 33 feet to make it more dramatic from a distance, purely for visual effect. He created the Grand Corridor, 550 feet long, connecting the private and public wings. Most crucially, he designed the private apartments in the East Wing as a self-contained residence. Bedrooms, libraries, breakfast rooms, sitting rooms, and private chapels arranged around internal courtyards invisible from outside. The innovation was spatial privacy within a public building. Previous monarchs lived in state apartments where courtiers had traditional rights of access. George IV's design created lockable domestic space, doors that could be closed, corridors that servants entered only by summons, rooms where family could be family, not monarchy. His successors expanded the concept. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert transformed the private apartments into a middle class, domestic ideal writ. Large fireplaces replaced ceremonial hearths. Comfortable furniture displaced throne-like chairs. Family portraits hung instead of state iconography. Victoria wrote in her journal about the blessed peace of the private apartments, where she could escape the burden of being queen. But domestic peace was only part of the story. These private rooms also became the setting for decisions that shaped empires. It was in a Windsor sitting room that Victoria argued with her prime ministers over military appointments. In these rooms, Edward VII discussed British foreign policy informally with visiting heads of state, conducting shadow diplomacy beyond parliamentary oversight. George V held emergency meetings here during the 1931 financial crisis, helping select the national government without consulting broader constitutional process. The private apartments weren't just retreats. They were power centers, informal, flexible, unrecorded. And that informality was the point. What happened in private stayed private. No Hansard record, no ministerial memoranda. Just royal prerogative exercised in rooms the public couldn't see. They didn't know it yet, but this architectural separation of public and private would become both the monarchy's greatest strength and its most vulnerable pressure point. Because by the 1990s, the question would no longer be, what happens in private? But why should anything be private at all? The private apartments require 42 full-time staff to maintain. Housekeepers, conservation specialists, pages, footmen, and maintenance crews working in rotations invisible to tourists. Every morning, teams enter through service corridors, the green drawing room staff door, the Brunswick Tower service entrance, to prepare rooms that may or may not be used that day. The operational complexity is feudal in scale. Each fireplace in the private apartments, there are 37, requires daily ash removal, grate polishing, and coal or wood provision during winter months. Crystal chandeliers need weekly dusting. Carpets, some hand-woven in the 19th century, require specialized conservation cleaning quarterly. Artwork rotates seasonally to prevent light damage, each move documented by the Royal Collection Trust. But the real cost isn't labor, it's secrecy maintenance. Consider the paper trail. Every document generated in the private apartments, personal correspondence, meeting notes, financial records, must be classified, cataloged, and controlled. The Royal Archives employ 15 full-time archivists and researchers managing this material. Letters between Queen Elizabeth II and her prime ministers, constitutionally privileged communications, remain sealed for decades. Medical records, psychological assessments, family legal documents, all locked under royal privilege. This creates a fundamental asymmetry. Historians can access parliamentary debates, cabinet minutes, and civil service memoranda from 30 years ago. But the royal side of those same conversations remains classified. We know what the government said to the Queen. We often don't know what she said back, or what she wrote in the margins, or what she argued for in private meetings. The constitutional justification is neutrality. Britain's unwritten constitution positions the monarch as politically neutral, advising and warning governments but never publicly opposing them. For this neutrality to function, the argument goes, private royal opinions must remain private. If the public knew a monarch disagreed with elected government, it could create constitutional crisis. But this reasoning creates a historical vacuum. How did Elizabeth II actually exercise her constitutional powers over 70 years? What did she think about Suez, Thatcher, Brexit? Her weekly meetings with prime ministers generated no minutes. Her private papers remain sealed. Future historians will write her political biography without access to her actual political thinking. The financial costs compound the informational ones. The sovereign grant funding for official royal activities is publicly audited. But the privy purse, funding personal expenses and private household operations, remains largely opaque. We know the private apartment's basic maintenance comes from public funds, but detailed expenditures, security upgrades, technology installations, personal customizations aren't itemized publicly. Then there's the 1992 fire. Windsor Castle burned for 15 hours, destroying 9 state apartments and damaging over 100 rooms. The private apartments, separated by Wyattvilles' careful design, survived largely intact. But the fire forced a public reckoning. Should taxpayers fund the £36.5 million restoration? The controversy revealed deeper tensions. The castle was simultaneously a national monument, a private residence, and a working royal palace. When the private blurred into the public, who paid? The compromise opening Buckingham Palace to tourists to raise restoration funds actually reinforced the private-public divide. Tourism revenue from public access subsidized private residential luxury. This economic model troubled constitutional scholars. The monarchy argued it needed private space to function humanely. Critics argued that privacy enabled unaccountable power. If decisions affecting the nation occurred in private Windsor rooms, shouldn't there be public accountability? Behind closed doors, the debate grew sharper. Staff who worked in the private apartments signed non-disclosure agreements, legally binding contracts preventing them from discussing what they saw or heard. Footmen who served meals during which constitutional matters were discussed couldn't later testify to historians. Housekeepers who cleaned studies containing sensitive documents couldn't describe them. The architecture of secrecy became a legal architecture. Walls and contracts reinforcing each other. And as the 20th century progressed, those walls would face unprecedented assault, not from revolutionaries, but from technologies and social movements that rejected the very premise of privileged privacy. The arithmetic turned brutal. The more the monarchy depended on public approval, the more it needed to reveal. But the more it revealed, the more its constitutional mystique dissolved. The private apartments became the physical embodiment of this paradox, rooms that had to exist, but couldn't be fully explained. August 31st, 1997, Princess Diana dies in a Paris car crash. Within 48 hours, the British monarchy faces its most severe legitimacy crisis in a century, not because of what happened in Paris, but because of what didn't happen at Windsor. The Queen remained at Balmoral, no public statement. No flag at half-mast over Windsor Castle. For 5 days, silence from the private apartments. The public interpreted this privacy as coldness, the traditional reserve as indifference. 1 million people queued to sign condolence books while the royal family stayed behind closed doors. When the Queen finally returned to Windsor, she found a nation that had fundamentally shifted. The private-public contract, "will respect your privacy if you perform your public duty," had collapsed. Suddenly, privacy looked like evasion. Sealed rooms looked like fortresses. The architectural separation George IV had engineered 170 years earlier became a liability. The monarchy adapted, but slowly. In 2002, the Golden Jubilee included unprecedented access, cameras in previously off-limits corridors, interviews with private secretaries, carefully staged glimpses into working areas of the private apartments. The message was transparency, though actual transparency remained limited. Cameras showed beautiful rooms, but revealed nothing substantive about decision-making processes. The financial pressures mounted simultaneously. The sovereign grants formula tied to Crown estate profits ballooned to £86.3 million by 2021. Public scrutiny intensified. When Prince Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein became public, demands arose for access to Andrew's correspondence and private meeting records. The royal family's lawyers cited privacy protections. Critics called it cover-up. Then came Harry and Meghan. Their 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey explicitly attacked the private-public divide, alleging that private family dysfunction contradicted public image, that concerns about their son's skin color were discussed in rooms the public never sees, that the institution prioritized protecting privacy over protecting people. True or not, the allegation struck at the private apartment's core justification. If private spaces enabled racist conversations, toxic family dynamics, or institutional cruelty, what good was privacy? The constitutional crisis deepened with each revelation. When the Paradise Papers in 2017 showed the Duchy of Lancaster private estate funding the Privy Purse invested in tax havens, questions arose. What else remained hidden in private financial arrangements? When the Queen successfully lobbied to exempt the royal family from transparency laws in the 1970s, using private access to ministers, it emerged only via released government documents decades later. The royal side of that conversation? Still sealed. By 2020, researchers documented over 1,000 instances where the monarch or Prince of Wales had lobbied government privately on legislation affecting their interests, planning laws near estates, inheritance tax provisions, marine conservation rules impacting Duchy of Cornwall holdings. These interventions occurred in private meetings, generated no public record, and were revealed only through investigative journalism. The private apartments became symbols of a larger problem: hereditary power exercised without accountability. The same rooms where George V studied constitutional crises now seemed like places where privilege protected itself from scrutiny. The 1992 fire's metaphorical resonance returned. What if the whole structure was burning? What if the distinction between private and public monarchy was no longer sustainable in an age of radical transparency, social media exposure, and democratic expectation? Prince Charles, as heir, faced this question directly. When he ascended as King Charles III in 2022, observers wondered, would he maintain the sealed archives, the private apartment's strict boundaries, the classification systems protecting royal documents, or would a new generation finally open the doors? Early signs suggested continuity. The Royal Archives access policies remained unchanged. Private apartments at Windsor continued under the same security and privacy protocols. The new king's private correspondence as Prince of Wales, including the notorious Black Spider memos to ministers, remained privileged despite court challenges. The fortress held. But outside its walls, the siege continued. Today, visitors to Windsor Castle follow prescribed routes: state apartments, St. George's Chapel, the drawings gallery. At certain points, you can glimpse the private apartment's exterior windows looking onto the east terrace, doors marked private in discreet brass letters, but you'll never enter those doors unless you're one of the 150 people who work inside. The private apartments continue as they have for 2 centuries, a parallel world within the castle. Current royal residents include Prince Edward and Sophie, Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, who occupy rooms in the East Wing. When King Charles visits Windsor, he prefers Clarence House. He uses private suites prepared by staff who arrived hours earlier through underground passages tourists don't know exist. The preservation story is one of institutional inertia. After the 1992 fire, restoration architect Donald Insall implemented modern fire suppression, climate control, and security systems throughout Windsor, including the private apartments. But the fundamental spatial arrangement remained unchanged. Public performance spaces separated from private residential ones, with legal and physical barriers maintaining that separation. Some archives have opened, slowly. In 2017, royal financial accounts became slightly more detailed. In 2020, researchers gained access to some George V-era documents. But the trend is selective transparency releasing, material that reinforces positive narratives while keeping sensitive items sealed. Edward VIII's full FBI file remains classified. George V's medical records are closed. Elizabeth II's prime ministerial correspondence stays locked. What this means practically, we know more about Queen Victoria's private life diaries, letters, medical details published decades ago than about Elizabeth II's, despite living in an age of supposed transparency. The architecture of secrecy became more sophisticated, even as it appeared to liberalize. Constitutional scholars remain divided. Some argue privacy is essential, that without confidential space, the monarchy cannot fulfill its role of advising government candidly. Others counter that this creates unaccountable power, where hereditary privilege influences democratic processes without public knowledge or oversight. The private apartments stand at the center of this debate. They are beautiful rooms: William IV's dining room with its Gainsborough portraits, Victoria's sitting room with hand-painted wallpaper, Elizabeth II's study, where she worked on the red boxes of government papers for 70 years. But they are also constitutional anomalies, spaces where public figures conduct public business in private, beyond freedom of information laws, parliamentary oversight, or historical scrutiny. The philosophical question Windsor poses is ancient. What happens when power claims privacy? Democratic theory suggests that those who govern must be visible, accountable, transparent. But the British monarchy argues it doesn't govern. It merely advises, symbolizes, represents. Therefore, its privacy is personal, not political. Yet the evidence from those sealed rooms suggests otherwise. The monarch's advice to prime ministers has shaped policy. Royal lobbying has influenced legislation. Private wealth has intermingled with public duty in ways that blur the personal and political. The broader lessons reach beyond Windsor's walls. The castle represents an older model of power: hereditary, discretionary, patriarchal, surviving by adapting its exterior while preserving its core. State apartments renovated for tourists, while private apartments remain off-limits. Financial disclosures increased while substantive decision-making stays opaque. The appearance of transparency masking the reality of sealed evidence. Other European monarchies chose differently. The Dutch royal house opened historical archives comprehensively. Spanish royal finances face parliamentary audit. Swedish Crown Princess Victoria discussed her eating disorder publicly. But the British model remained the Windsor model: reveal enough to satisfy, seal enough to protect, maintain the walls within walls. Perhaps that's why those private apartments matter beyond architectural or historical curiosity. They represent a choice, a society's decision about whether hereditary power justifies permanent secrets, whether 52 rooms in an 11th century castle should remain sealed, because monarchy requires mystery to function. As climate protesters scale Windsor's walls demanding accountability, as Republicans question the £100 million spent maintaining royal residences, as historians file requests for century-old documents and receive denials, those locked doors become increasingly symbolic. They protect privacy. They hide evidence. They maintain mystique. They prevent reckoning. Stand outside Windsor Castle today, and you're seeing what George IV designed 2 centuries ago. A public face magnificent enough to inspire awe, and a private interior carefully hidden from view. The tourists take photos of the towers and gates. Inside, staff polish fireplaces in rooms the public will never see. And in archives deep within those walls, documents sit in acid-free boxes, sealed until dates not yet determined, containing evidence of conversations and decisions we're told we don't need to know. The question remains, when does privacy become secrecy? When does tradition become obstruction? When does the right to private life, which every person deserves, become a tool for avoiding the accountability that democratic society demands? Windsor Castle won't answer. It just stands there, stone and silence, walls within walls, 950 years of continuity purchased partly through 200 years of strategic concealment. The doors stay locked, and what remains sealed may be more revealing than what's ever been shown. Today, morning light still cuts through arrow-slit windows. Tourists still photograph throne rooms. And somewhere in the East Wing, in rooms we'll never see, the machinery of monarchy continues. Phone calls, meetings, decisions, correspondence. All of it private, much of it sealed. Some of it, perhaps, evidence that history will judge differently when those archives finally open, if they open decades from now. The secret isn't what they're hiding. The secret is that we've agreed to let them hide it.